Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of From Seafarer to Landlubber. The aim of these episodes is to highlight the diversity of career options for seafarers thinking of coming ashore and those who chose to step away from the beaten path. A peek into the thinking, the challenges faced, and how they overcome. Finally, we will seek their thoughts of how seafarers who are contemplating stepping ashore can make this journey. I'm delighted to be joined by Captain Vivek Sood from Australia. Captain Vivek is an ex-master mariner, consultant, CEO of a global supply chain group, and an author of 4 books. Welcome, Captain Vivek.
Thank you, Amrit. It's a pleasure to talk to you after so many days, after so many years.
It is indeed. It is indeed. And thank you for sharing your time. So let's dive straight into the conversation. What was the trigger for you to join Sea? And can you briefly describe your career at Sea?
Yeah, definitely. So I joined Sea after class 12, as it is called in India, and year 12 is called in Australia. So in 1982, I graduated from my school and I joined what is called TS Rajendra, or was called TS Rajendra at that time, straight out of a competition, which was an all India competition, same as what you did at that time. And that was the trigger. I guess the main reason I joined Sea was basically in 1982 in India at that time, there were not many career options. The major career options were either you become an engineer or you become a doctor. I was very clear I didn't want to be a doctor because I was particularly bad at biology. So the choice was something to do with engineering or something to do with Navy or merchant Navy or things like that. My schooling was in Sainik School, Kapurthala, so that's the reason why I was attracted to sea life. And I'm glad that I got to join merchant Navy because it was a highly satisfying career for me at that time. Same as most of my batchmates, I left TS Rajendra in 1983, joined as a cadet in a company called Larsen and Toubro Limited. They had a small shipping division which had only 5 ships at that time, but was good enough to offer me a very brilliant career as a cadet for 3 years, and after that as a third officer, and second mates, chief mates, and masters, and kept getting promotions with a variety of companies. And I kept working till 1993 when I was a master mariner, and then I quit the sea life.
What motivated you to step ashore?
Well, it was not a sudden decision. It was a realization at some point of time that really, while sea life was a very satisfying career, was an extremely good career to learn new ways of doing things and to observe how work is done in various parts of the world, in hundreds of ports around the world where I was going and loading break bulk cargo, for example. They were loading exactly the same thing in a very different way in so many different places. So no doubts, and you have to be extremely resourceful to survive at sea. There is no help available once you are out at sea. And you're managing these multicultural teams of diverse nationalities for one single purpose. So those were very good parts of sea life. But there were, of course, many other things like the isolation, and also the fact that once you are married, you are away from family for such a long time. And as I thought ahead, it was clear that I didn't want to stay at sea for very long. And then the big decision was, when do I quit? And some people said, why don't you take experience as master for a few years and then decide what you want to do? And I heard so many different stories of people who had become masters and got stuck in that rut. And I didn't want to get stuck. And that's the reason why I quit sea life early rather than late.
when this was formulated in your mind, did you think of preparing yourself in any way?
Yes, I thought very long and hard about it. In fact, I was working for a British company at that time, and it was very easy to actually start a correspondence course with Institute of Chartership Brokers to learn some shore skills which would be transferable from sea to shore. And my first plan was to become a chartered shipbroker. I actually did the exams. I did the entire correspondence course while I was still at sea. Um, so I did the course while I was at sea, but I did the exams once I had stepped ashore. And in fact, I did very well in that exam. I stood first in the entire world in the dry cargo chartering exam, which was a fantastic um way of saying that it's not impossible to prepare yourself for a career ashore while you are at sea. Only thing was, by that time I had also planned to migrate to Australia, and there were not many jobs as a shipbroker in Australia. So that entire preparation wasn't very useful for me in the long run.
All right. And did you think about getting some extra education, which would sort of give you more skills, different to what you picked up at sea?
Yes, so as I was doing the course for the Institute of Chartership Brokers, one thing which occurred to me was basically learning a little bit more on the business side of shipping, and perhaps doing a master's of science in maritime business or something like that. And we have a course like that in University of Tasmania in Australian Maritime College. And in fact, that was the first MBA I joined. Um, but it was very clear that the level of MBA and the course wasn't really extremely high. So from that, I continued doing that, but started doing an MBA at what is called Australian Graduate School of Management, which is reputedly the best management school in Australia.
It seems that you armed yourself pretty well. You did try a few things. Can I ask you how has been the journey ashore so far, and what are the challenges that you faced?
Okay, so the first challenge I faced, and I'll sort of go back to your part about being armed with the skills. I must say I was more or less stumbling along, trying to find my way, rather than actually arming myself with skills. It was more a case of, okay, what can I do? And I did a course in Institute of Chartered Shipbrokers, very useful. At the same time, no jobs in Australia. Okay, if there are no jobs, what else can I do? Get an education in maritime business, go to the school, pay a large fee, but at the same time, the standard of education in that particular institute was extremely poor. So what do I do? I went and inquired from the potential employers, and they didn't regard that institution very highly. So I looked at, okay, which is the institution that people regard highly? Australian Graduate School of Management. Let's get into that. It's quite expensive. I did GMAT and got a good score, so they gave me a scholarship for part of the fees, which was very, very useful. So my challenges at that time were much more basic than the challenges people face today. There was such a dearth of information that we had to literally write to these institutes and then get a written a package in a mail after about 3 weeks. And then we interpret that package and try and figure out exactly what does this, where does it fit into my career plan. Today, you can do all that research in half a day sitting on internet.
Yeah, so it's the explosion of internet, I think, has made it easy for information to be soaked by people sitting at just their terminal. So you've been ashore in sort of various roles. How do you find your work ashore? And would there be any specific project or area of work which has given you great satisfaction, which you think you could share with us?
Yeah, certainly. So let's go back to once I did my MBA, what did I do? I fully expected to go back into shipping industry, which was the only industry I knew thus far. And I thought once I have a good MBA, I can start discussing a potential management position uh, with a shipping company. In fact, I did my summer traineeship in a company called TNT, which was one of the three largest courier companies in the world, and they had their global headquarters right here in Sydney, Australia. Um, However, by the time I graduated, two things became very clear. One was that I had actually almost outgrown the shipping industry as such. Um Second thing which became very clear was from one of my professors who insisted that I should go and work in a management consulting company after MBA for at least 2 years. In his words, this was meant to be almost like an apprenticeship or cadetship for MBAs. He said you learn a lot of theory in MBA, but what's the point of learning all this theory unless you go and utilize it in real life and get an opportunity to apply all this theory at the highest level it can be applied. And he in fact arranged some of my meetings with the management consulting companies. And I'm very grateful to him for his advice, as much as his insistence that I go and at least have a discussion, even if I was not interested in consulting industry as such. Um, as it so happened, I went and interviewed with McKinsey and Company, with Boston Consulting Group, with Booz Allen and Hamilton, and the third one was a major click because, as I saw, the people were serious people with a lot of operational experience in running big factories, big lumber camps, all sorts of operational um, outfits. So somebody who has run a ship just fits into that kind of outfit. And as I applied this theory, I became very deeply interested in what is called supply chain management. And Booz Allen and Hamilton was the company which invented supply chain management in 1970s and 80s. So still there were lots of very good people there, and I had an opportunity to learn from the masters. So having worked a few years, I wanted to specialize in supply chain management, which is my field now for last 30 years, you can say, or okay, for last 26 years or so. And I had the good fortune of forming a partnership with one of the people who was part of that original team which invented supply chain management. And now our partnership has been going strong for over 16 years. And we have had opportunity to work on some of the most interesting supply chain projects on earth. And we very carefully pick and choose projects where we can push the boundaries of supply chain management. And it's a lot of fun. We don't do it for free, but money is not the main motivator.
Can you share a little bit about the books that you have written? Are they about the supply chain as well?
All four books are about supply chain management. First book was called Green Supply Chain and Action Manifesto. This was the world's first book on green supply chain management. So today, sustainable supply chain or green supply chain has become a buzzword, and every company talks about it. But when I wrote this book in 2009, 2010, and by the time it came out in 2012, it was still world's first book in practical green supply chain management. It was based on a real life case experience, and the whole sort of framework and theory that we had created around that framework. And that's the reason why this book became extremely popular, and it's been quoted by more than 100 academic journals and PhD students and academics around the world. And it became like the recommended book for lots of PhD programs and a number of executive education program in green supply chain management. Second book I wrote was called 5-Star Business Networks. It was about how supply chains are morphing into ecosystems and big business networks. And this book was a very thick book. I haven't brought it here, but at some stage, people can go to the website. In fact, type in 5starbusinessnetwork.com and they can have a look at the book. The third book I wrote was called outsourcing3.com. So that's the website, and the name of the book is Outsourcing 3.0. It is all about how these business networks or business ecosystems use outsourcing to strengthen ties and strengthen profits. And the fourth book is called Unchain Your Corporation. So that is the most relevant book today in the post-COVID era, when most companies have become chained by very traditional systems, very traditional ways of doing business. So that book is available on unchainyourcorporation.com.
It's remarkable. It's like, you have such good understanding and hold of the supply chain that, you've been able to translate it into writing. And maybe some of, the viewers listening can step into a straight supply chain career as well.
Absolutely. It's a growth career. In fact, I wrote a report which I make available for a very nominal fee of $9. It's called Everything You Want to Know About a Supply Chain Career. And it is meant for young people, whether they are from shipping industry or from engineering or from anywhere else, about anything they want to know about supply chain.
All right, brilliant. And, that's so nice to hear that, you've been putting these things together and it can assist so many people. So finally, to wrap up, if I were to ask you as to what advice would you have for, the current seafarers who are contemplating stepping ashore? In a nutshell, would you be able to share some of your thoughts?
Absolutely. Here are my thoughts and advice that everybody has to think on their own for themselves. My thoughts are simple. First thing is, make a decision whether you want to continue at sea or not. And how long do you want to continue at sea? Don't let your career be on an autopilot. Second thing is, once you decide whether you want to stay on or not, decide when you want to move on and prepare as much as you can before you move on. Because even if it is not 100% usable, some of those preparations will come in very handy once you move on. And next thing is, there are far too many careers ashore. It's not just that you become a draft surveyor or something, or a ship surveyor, and that's the extent to it of it. Truth is, today I am in touch with ex-mariners around the world who are into all sorts of positions, who are on board of directors of private equity companies, who are on board of directors of oil refineries, and very, very influential positions around the world. And somehow we formed this network on LinkedIn, because a lot of us were in a similar position to me, stumbling along and finding what else can I be doing. And these people have blazed the trail for you. All you have to do is walk into their footsteps, and you can actually create a great life and a great career in a variety of positions.
I think if what I gather is that from what you've shared is that sky is the limit. And if you think hard, and if you have the right skill set and you keep working on it, you can, transform from a sea career into a career ashore.
Absolutely. Sky is the limit, and certainly there'll be stumbling blocks along the way, and there are no smooth transitions, so to speak. No voyage goes without its own storms and hitches, but in the end, you always arrive on the other end.
Brilliant. That's such good advice and thoughts. So thank you, Captain Vivek, for sharing your valuable thoughts. Until next episode, wishing everyone fair winds and following seas.